Welcome everyone to today's XCLusive. I love that name. One day we should talk about how you all came up with that name because I was not in that meeting.
All Kareen.
Today we are going to be talking about everyone's favorite topic, security. Is no one's favorite topic. Unless you're responsible for it, then it's your favorite topic.
I'm here for this. So if you're like me, this is your favorite topic. This is only all the things about how this works and how I can explain it to my IT team without being laughed at. Yeah.
It's a good point. Why don't we kick this off with how XCL works?
Good idea.
Let's do
That's a good
that.
idea.
So we'll start with this fantastic visualization. I don't know who made this.
Very good. Very good, Sarah.
But I think it's worthwhile to kick off our session today on security by talking a little bit about how XCL is different than your traditional learning platforms, your LMSs, LXPs, LMNOPs. Do you want to talk us through how what we're seeing in this diagram is different than what you find in a traditional learning platform?
Sure. So yeah, let's talk about it from a couple different perspectives because there's different ways that we can use our tool. And again, one of the big differences between XCL and a traditional learning management system or platform is that we don't try to have all the pieces front to end of a whole system that someone can enter, look at things, do things, have menus, and then leave. What we are is a tool that provides a link between that individual and some content. And then along that path, along the path of that linkage, we collect data. So that's the bigger difference. It's lighter weight, there's less involved. And from a perspective of where things are, our tool sits beside your content. It's not encompassing your content. So a couple things to think about with XCL. Your content can live wherever it needs to be. So the items on the left side of this diagram, the web pages, videos, SCORM modules, XAPI courses, things like that, job aids, infographics, those live somewhere. They either live on the storage that's provided with XCL. We do provide generous storage for you to store these items and link to them directly in the tool, but they don't have to. They can live anywhere else. They can live on your own corporate servers. They can live where they exist presently online. They can live on wherever they tend to live, which kind of helps us bridge that idea that this content is where people are anyway. The content itself gets to live where people use it naturally, where they're accustomed to working with other types of content. And then, of course, there's the XCL, which provides the link. So you create a link to that content, and then the learners use that link, and then the data gets directly ported from that content player, that link, to your learning record store, and doesn't really have to come back and touch the XCL at all. So it's a kind of a different way to think about how data flows in a learning environment, but it breaks down that barrier that the content isn't trapped within a new ecosystem that, into today's topic, doesn't need to be necessarily secured at the platform side.
Right.
Any of that.
Well, that's what I love about today's discussion because the way that we structured XCL is different fundamentally than how a learning platform works. So, a learning platform, you go, you log in, you access content. If someone deep links to that content and they share a link, then you're still going and logging in somewhere. And the only exception to that is if somehow you are being authenticated in some other way, right? Maybe through a single sign on, but there's a gate. There always is a gate in learning platforms that you have to pass through the gate. So I thought it might be useful to talk a little bit about that gate because sometimes that gate is extremely important and sometimes it's not. And what does that gate look like in our environment as compared to an LMS? So let's start with the gate of security because that's what today's topic is about. If we think about that gate that you have to pass through, are you allowed to access this content? So it could be because you paid for it, right? It's training that you paid for. So nobody gets to have this training unless they paid for it. Or it could be that the information in that content is it's
Sensitive.
secret, right? It's the special secrets. And so we want to make sure that the right people are accessing the content that they should be privy to. So that's another reason why. And those privacy and security reasons for a gate are important. And so in that environment, how would XCL work?
So in that environment, in an IT infrastructure such as that, there are going to be places within that IT infrastructure that are secured so that for those eyes only can see things within that area. There's two ways to do this. One is the link itself can exist within a structure that only the right person could go and see. So the person who's paid a link within their own account. These links are incredibly difficult to replicate. And they don't, unless they're posted somewhere publicly, they're not going to show up in a search engine or anything like that. But the XCL itself doesn't have an opinion on who sees the content. It's the people who create XCL links that have an opinion on who should see the content, and they can barrier where they give access to the link to said content. And the content itself can be or not be secured itself. So that's like part number two is we can secure just the content. From an IPT perspective, I can put it in a OneDrive or on a VPN or in an Active Directory that only the right people can see. And I've allowed the security groups access that need access to it, in which case, if someone else found this link, if I copied the link and pasted it to someone else or put it on a social media platform or accidentally emailed it to the wrong people, then those people wouldn't have access to the content anyway. They would open the link and it wouldn't lead to anything. There would be barriered access. So
Right.
again, we can manage with a lot of different types of security profiles needs when it comes to the securing of content. And at the same time, without any change to the platform, without any requirement for additional components, we can provide access to the whole world. So you could send a link out on the same platform with the same rules that is available to anyone who wants to self-identify and take and use the content. So this is a situation of my internal staff that need very specific and sensitive training to my customer base that I don't know who they are until they've come and taken the training. So we manage both sides and have no real strict opinion on how that gets used. It's just how you use the tool.
And I think that's a really important distinction because we have a certificate program that people have to pay for to access it. And that is behind a Stripe paywall. Until you pay for it and you create an account, which in our case is on our website. So we already have an existing website and structure for this process. When you create your account, then you have access to the content. And I think one of the things that is interesting to me, having been through this process, is that prior to XCL, we had to not only have the website, but I had to have the LMS that we were using sync up with the permissions on the website in order for that to pass neatly through. I don't have to do that anymore. I can completely remove that LMS layer. And now they pay for it. They get access to the website and then they have access to the links that they've paid for. And then that's it. And I don't have to add another layer of complexity, another logon, another integration, another cost. I don't have to do those things. And I think that is something that is definitely different about the way that XCL works, because on the flip side of that, one of the problems that we often had was that we had organizations we were working with that wanted the opposite. They wanted to know who was accessing it, was it useful, what did they do? But they didn't need somebody to authenticate in. It wasn't a security issue, it wasn't privacy, it wasn't something they were paying for. They were training customers. They were training the general public. They wanted people to have access to this information. They wanted the data, but they didn't want to have to create an account. And in that type of environment, this tool gives you the flexibility to also do that, where I can distribute content to unlimited people and not have to force people through the barrier of creating an account and authenticating in when I didn't need them to authenticate into it in the first place.
Correct.
Now, let's talk about a slightly different reason why someone might need to authenticate, and that is access and distribution. So, how can I make sure the right people are accessing this, right? Because it's not about security, it's not secret, but I just want this group to know they have to take this training and this group doesn't take this training. So, how do I manage that type of situation?
So again, it's flexible, but at the end of the day, one of the better ways to provide access to training for a specific group is to put the link or include that link to training where those people already do work. So if they have an intranet portal that they're used to going to, where they're collecting other kinds of messaging, they're getting other kinds of information, tasks, things that they need to do that are relevant to that piece of training, then in that case, you can simply put the link there. Again, we're not an LMS, so that link isn't going to lead to another login or a complex menu system, a structure that needs to be navigated through. It's simply click the link, get the content. And we do have an SSO option where they won't even have to self-identify. If they're within a structure that they are being identified, then we can move that data directly through to the link, which can simplify things and lower even that simple barrier of clicking OK after your name autofills.
I think that reminds me of another interesting distinction in comparing how LMSs work and comparing how XCL works is that the moment that somebody gets into it, I know it immediately. I see that data happening in real time. So if I want to monitor this and I all of a sudden see that somebody from this group, and we're not talking security here, we're talking just access. If I see people in the sales group are accessing this training for the communications team and they don't need to, I can let them know. I can say, hey, I noticed that you all were getting into this. Was this something that was interesting to you? Maybe we want them to have it. Maybe that they feel that it's useful to them. There are a lot of things that we start to learn when we can collect data about what's happening in real time. Because XCL is not based on just did you complete it, right? It's not did they finish it or did they register for it, but I can see what's happening in that content in real time. I can see did somebody launch it and then realize, oh, that wasn't for me and close it out. Or maybe they closed it out for some other reason. And starting to collect those data helps me start to understand what might be happening. And that is very different than any kind of traditional LMS system that we have. Now, I've been doing this work just like you, Rob. We've been doing this work for well over 2 decades. And I don't want to imply that no learning platform can replicate some of this functionality in different ways. What I will stand on my soapbox and say is that it is incredibly difficult because those platforms are built in a way that is intended to be used a certain way. And so when you try to deviate from that, it is a lot of work. It is very administrative. It's clunky and it's not a good user experience. And that is the reason why we built this tool in the first place. We built this tool because we use it at Build Capable with our clients in our organization for our own courses, for our own content. We use our tool. We built it for us first. We've had it for a year and a half before anybody else got to access it or use it. And so I think it's really interesting how this solves a problem, even if you're extending the current functionality of your LMS.
Sure.
Let's say that you've got your LMS set up, it works really well for certain things, compliance or whatever. What about the situations where, oh, I also have this group of contractors that I need to train, or partners, or customers, or someone outside of my traditional HRIS, my HR system connected to my LMS and the accounts I've loaded and mimic the groups and all the work I've just put into that. What if I now need to do something different? Do I need to go to my LMS vendor and say, can I please have another instance of this for customer training? And can you please take off some of these things that you make this so complicated and clunky to do? Do I take that path? Or is there a better way to do that? And I think that's where XCL comes in.
For sure. The number of people I've talked to that, as you just said, have a second instance of an LMS for outward training, which has a completely different payment model, has a completely different usability model by virtue of the fact that it could be a very vast number of students that only need it for a very short period of time. And that management and overhead of that can be daunting and expensive and difficult to set up. And to your earlier point, in some cases, the problem of having people take too much training in some environments could be a good thing. It's difficult to get people
Get out of
in
here.
certain environments to take the training they required to take versus take too much. It's like the lens on which we view the problem. There is sensitive content in the world that shouldn't be shared, but there's definitely content that doesn't necessarily need to be censored within an organization, that if people in another sales group were trying to learn more about a way of selling that makes them more successful, then I don't think we need to barrier that. This type of platform doesn't put barriers up. It simply allows that to happen. And we filter the data for reporting. The people that were supposed to take it, we filter the reporting for that and see that they hit the target. And then we can also look at the data of who wasn't supposed to take this that was taking this. And can we talk to those folks and see what their needs were?
And I think that's another important distinction, right? Because we talk about, oh, I want to only make sure the right people get it. And my question is often, are you having a problem with people taking training they're not supposed to? Are people just going out and ready to take training? And is that bad? Because there is a difference between security and there's a difference between that and making sure the right people get it. Because the reality is, and we learn this through everything that we know about the research of learning and the flow of work, performance support, everything we know about the way that people learn and how to support people specifically in the workforce tells us that we should be putting this information where they trip over it, to quote my friend JD Dillon. And so if I think about where people already are, you're on Slack, you're on Teams, you're on a sales portal, a website, your SharePoint site, you're on your work portal, your wikis, your discussion boards, and those things are already set up in groups with security often that are already gating some of these things. That is a perfect place to put an XCL learning link where people can get access to it quickly, not have to log in and create another user account. And if that's important, obviously you can use SSO and use existing single sign-on to pick up that person's information to remove friction even further from them being able to access that content. But let's put the information where people actually need it and stop making them go to an LMS to get it. And that's the part that I think that XCL makes so much easier. I also want to bring up one other thing that is probably worthwhile to talk about around security, and that is, what if, Rob, somebody shares my link? Like, I get it in my group and then I share it out to the world. What's going to happen then? How do we protect against that?
Okay, so there's ways we can protect against that. If that is a risk that you're worried about, we simply can put the content in a place where only those within the organization or within a certain security group can access it. In which case, anyone else with the link will self-identify and receive nothing. Get content. It won't link through to anything. I'd say that would be the number one case. It's a dead firewall against unintended access. The other is, as we were just saying, if it's something that's more broadly reaching, that's not very sensitive, again, if it doesn't matter who's taking it, if it doesn't actually matter, if it's just additional training or it would seem maybe inappropriate or simply just time waste for other people to take it, people will filter. They'll be like, I don't need to use this. Why did I click this link that came to me in an email that I shouldn't have seen? In which case, that kind of filters itself out. And then there's the data itself. Again, we can filter that data down to who needs to see it. We could use additional data within the self-identifying form to group people by department or by geographic area or by some type of secret code that only they have, in which we can very quickly filter that data. But we can also filter name by name. Those are the kinds of things we can use. Again, there's no strict way that we need to do it. Each organization may have a different preference on how they look at that. And some organizations, as you mentioned, Sarah, might be more interested in seeing who are all these people that are taking this training. Why is this piece of training so incredibly successful that folks are sharing it? And what can
Right.
we do to capture that and use that in our next initiative that's maybe more broadly based? So there's a lot of opportunity buried in these kind of accidental leaks of a link kind of thing.
I love that. And I think that it reminds me of how we think about things, as you mentioned earlier. And if somebody wants to share your sensitive information, they're going to do it. You can take a phone and screenshot information, use OCR to copy and paste it. If you want to do it, you can do it. Now, what we're trying to do is remove the time that somebody might spend and frustration of doing something they didn't need to do. And that, I think, is the bigger thing to think about is, did I think I had to do this and then I did it and I didn't need it? But I think that what XCL invites us to do is rethink how we've been designing these things in the first place. Because one of the things I think our team recognized very early is just how much we were designing for an LMS. Like how many design decisions were made contingent upon how that information was going to be distributed and tracked. And we get pigeonholed into having to do certain things in L&D because of the systems and platforms and their access, their functionality, their capabilities. And so when you start to remove that, people are like, hold on a minute. I can actually do more with this now. I can think about this differently. That removed a barrier that frankly did not need to exist for a lot of training in the first place, because not everything we do is compliance related. And even when it is, that probably wasn't the best way to get that compliance information to people and track whether or not they now have a change in behavior or mindset or understanding about what they should be doing. And I think we all know this as a field, but how we implement that is barriered by the systems and platforms we have.
For sure.
And that's where I think XCL flips that and says, you have the ability, lock it down, don't lock it down, make it public, make it anonymous, make it to where somebody can use their existing sign-on, put it somewhere where people can't access it because of their existing security setup. The tool lets you do any of those things. You get to decide what type of content is this, who needs to have it, how important is it to lock it down or not, and what do I want to know about that content so that I can collect the data that will be helpful to me, both to update my content as I need to your point, like what did we learn about this that would be useful in our future designs? And what are the things that we're doing that maybe we should cut that out? Maybe we don't need to do these videos because no one's watching them, or maybe we need to rethink how long they are because of how people are dropping off. And this gives you the ability to track that data and make that level of decision where we don't have that in a traditional LMS structure where it's, did you look at it? Did you complete it? Did you do this obscure multiple choice question test that didn't give anybody any real feedback? Like we can get into all of the design opportunities that are opened up for us by thinking about this a little differently.
Absolutely. So I think in the last couple minutes, what I wanted to really focus on was security. And we're just going to flip the script back to nerd speak. But just speaking through just the basics of security and what people would be looking for from an enterprise company with a rigid security policy down to a very small shop that's simply just looking to distribute some training. We fit within both environments as a tool.
Right.
And as a tool, we don't need to secure someone's experience end to end because we don't provide an end-to-end experience. From the administrator perspective, the creator of links, we're a tool with very high security login, all the things that you could ever imagine. talk to us about the specific certifications and specific questions about how we secure our data and how we go about managing security. But we're like any other platform or system that would have a login. Your information is protected, it's audited. We have the things. From the student side, there's a significant portion of the security sphere that's missing. And it's not missing because we're lazy, it's missing because you don't need it. At the end of the day, specific security guidelines for content comes from where the content lives. And XCL has no opinion on its own storage. It just says, hey, it's public, it's open to the wide internet. If that's something that's not suitable for your organization, you can find a place within your organization or set up some space within your organization that is more highly secured and set up to work within those existing groups and such. And you can distribute the content through simply linking to those areas and keep that level of security. From the data flow perspective from your user self-identifying or going through SSO, their data goes directly from their browser to the LRS. It doesn't come to us. It doesn't bounce off our tool. There's no database on our side where we're storing, even temporarily, that data. And the rest of the magic happens just directly in the browser. So from that perspective, we don't necessarily need to have the components and the pieces within the tool that manage security from an end user perspective, other than the administrator. They're the only ones who use the actual interface of the tool. The rest of it is static files. They're simply managed at the server level and they're flat. They don't get interacted with. There's no executables. We're safe from things like viral conditions, worms, whatnot, and so forth, and we're not attackable. You can't attack the outside link. There's no way to get to anything other than an LRS, which has its own layers of security. They're very well known. The LRS that we partner to use is government standard. It's a very secure, strong, capable LRS system, and you're using only a small instance of it.
I think that's an excellent point. And I think that just to wrap us up at time today is that we are no stranger to SOC 2, GDPR. Bring us your security requirements. On the admin side, your admin's logging in, creating those accounts. It's a secure tool. Let us talk to you about how to set up this for your environment the way that it makes sense for your own security and your own requirements, because every organization we talk to is just slightly different and sometimes vastly different in what their needs are. And the way you can do that is reach out to us at contact@buildcapable.com, and we'll share that in the recording. Thanks, Rob, for this exclusive and for talking about security with me today. Next week, we have an entire session on how to get better data out of articulate RISE. And we have a special guest. So Melissa Milloway will be joining us to talk about some super nerdy stuff that we've done. And I am so excited about that session because of some of the things that we've built. Mel did an amazing job of building an incredible app that we're going to talk about, and how to streamline some of this data collection in authoring tools that typically don't give us very good data. So I'm super excited about that. So join us next week, and we will see you all soon.